Marcus, what's the big deal? You don't need me, you're winning. The big deal is we're brothers.
Riders ready!
It's pretty fast, huh? Some of these guys are going to be hitting about 60 miles an hour.
Let them go, Tommy, they're nobodies. They'll die on the hill.
All right, tell me, Dr. Summers, when people aren't as strong as you would like them to be, okay, and they let you down, have you ever considered forgiving them?
He'll quit. I'll make sure of that.
We're going to win.
That's destiny.
Now, from John Badham, the director of War Games and Saturday Night Fever, comes the story of 4 lives changed by a once-in-a-lifetime dream. American Flyers.
We're talking Costner, tin cup to Silverado, talking Costner, Bodyguard and Fandango. Robin Hood is making the rich pay, going off the board on draft day, talking swing vote, Wyatt Earp and JFK.
Could be happier that we're finally here to talk, to let loose and let things fly and talk about what
American Flyers.
what was clearly supposed to be the great American cycling movie. And, well, I guess we'll talk about how it ended up, but I'm just gonna drink this beer and we can get into it. But before we do, how's it going, Cam?
It's going pretty good.
That's good, despite the last hour where we just could not get this thing. Couldn't get on the video. Then we couldn't.
You were a quiet little guy.
I was a quiet little guy.
That's not loud enough.
And we had to do some deep troubleshooting.
YouTube. You guys heard of it? Pretty good for that kind of thing.
Not bad.
I wanna thank YouTube user the Obsidian Sword for really helping us out on that one.
That's dope. I feel better about myself that legend came to our aid.
Yeah, giving that guy a few views, actually just one view.
Yeah.
But
I know this seems like a smooth, well-oiled machine here, but as we might have mentioned last episode, we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, It's a fugazi,
I got an ale. I got a bud in front of me. I got a movie in my heart.
Yeah,
so that's all we need. But
yeah. What have you been watching lately since last we spoke?
You know what I rewatched? I rewatched Avengers: Age of Ultron, which, especially over the years, I'd really given the rap that most people have of like, yeah, it's one of the worst of the MCU. It's probably the worst like Avengers movie, which like maybe it is. Yeah, actually, I think probably is of the Avenger 4. But having said that, also not like it's the bell curve of the MCU, where in terms of like comedy, sci-fi, superhero action, like it's all great for that genre. So it was better than I remember it by quite a bit. Second act of that movie is a mess because they're just trying to set up like 8,000 things for the future movies, but
not always a great recipe for movies.
Yeah, to try and
set up other movies.
Yeah, in the movie and not just tell your story, which I think that they learned from in the Marvel universe. They learned that lesson well. Yeah. What about you? What have you been watching?
A couple days ago, it was St. Patrick's Day, and our good pal Brennan McKibben last year on St. Patrick's Day, because it was like the beginning of lockdown. I texted him like, give me a bunch of like good Irish movies, and he gave me a long list, and we watched some of them. And
so he went up to you and he said, "Ever heard of Boondock Saints?"
that was not on the list, believe it or not. The Departed, not on the list. And last year we watched
just 6 hours of the Dropkick Murphys.
Yeah, no. Last year we watched Bloody Sunday, which is like Paul Greengrass, I think the director, is like really like documentary style, brutal massacre, and Hallie just was like, fuck, I can't watch this.
Yeah, Hallie wouldn't be into that.
Yeah, and then we watched In the Name of the Father.
Oh, and I was messaging. So when I saw Hallie post that you guys had you ever seen that movie before?
I had watched it like maybe first year university. Like when people were losing their minds over Daniel Day-Lewis from like There Will Be Blood. It's incredible. He's incredible in it. And so was Postlethwaite.
Yeah. Pete is like the whole cast and Emma Thompson in the direction. And of course it's a true story and fairly faithful from what I know. As you guys and gals listening know, we know how to wiki things, and from the wiki and the IMDb, fairly, I think, faithful to the actual story of the Guildford Four. But just like a master class in acting, especially the scenes between Daniel Day-Lewis and Pete Postlethwaite.
Quick question. Would Daniel Day-Lewis have made American Flyers better?
It's like, honestly, in my notes, perfect way to get into this. This is a film where you say, could this have been saved by another actor in a certain role? And we'll get into it. My instinct is I don't think even Daniel Day-Lewis I don't think if Daniel Day-Lewis was playing Davey, the younger brother, and Pete Postlethwaite was playing
Marcus Summers,
the older brother, and at least they have some kind of age gap there, versus in real life, these brothers are separated by a year.
Not even, I don't think.
Not even. Would it save this movie? I think the answer is no. But we'll discuss and we'll get into it.
I'm not giving my verdict on this movie yet, man.
Well, then this is perfect. Well, I'll give you the spoiler alert. I think this is a bad film.
Oh, right. Wow.
And I'll talk about why and why I think this movie can't be saved by another actor. We'll get into it, but we're here to talk about American Flyers.
We're talking American Flyers.
There's a reason I think I had never heard of this movie before and had certainly never seen it. And as I watched it, I went, yep, that makes sense. This is why I have never seen this. Oh boy, it's we're gonna get it. There's lots to talk about, and I'm not saying it's completely irredeemable, but this is a flick that's worth watching for the experience. I'll say that.
For those who don't know what American Flyers is about, American Flyers is about a guy named Marcus Summers and his brother David. Marcus and his brother.
His name is David. Okay,
his name is David, not Davey.
Proclaims at the dinner table at one point, "It's David, not Davey."
Yeah. So Marcus Summer takes his kid brother David with him for a physical test and a brain scan, suspecting a cerebral aneurysm like their father died of. They head off on a bike race in the Colorado Rockies to compete one last time together. That's the IMDb little bio. Key players in this movie, we got Kevin Costner. We got David Marshall Grant, who was also in The Stepford Wives and The Devil Wears Prada, apparently. I don't know. I haven't seen those movies. He didn't have a lot else on his IMDb that I recognized to really mention.
I've heard they're both good. I'm sure The Devil Wears Prada.
I don't think he has giant parts in either of them. I couldn't find a picture of him in like the IMDb.
Well, watching this movie, I think I know why.
Yeah. Well, but fun fact, and here's where I like to give people the good grace of like, who knows? He was young. Who knows if he could have done something? He was the original Joe Pitt in Angels in America on Broadway, and he was nominated for a Tony Award for it.
Wow.
But that was in 1993, I believe. So there might be more to old...
That's a few years after this, then.
That's a few years after that, yeah. It's also got Ray Don Chong. That's a really hard name to say. Yep. Ray Don Chong, who's in The Color Purple, Commando. She's Tommy Chong's daughter, correct?
Yes, she is.
Tommy Chong's daughter. Yeah. We got
Tommy Chong.
Alexandra Paul, who was in Christine and played Stephanie on Baywatch. Did you know that?
Get out of here. Are you serious?
She was David Hasselhoff's like significant other on Baywatch.
No way.
Janice Rule plays their mother, who is in a really fantastic film, probably in a top 20 films of all time for me, The Swimmer. If you can go see The Swimmer, watch The Swimmer.
I remember Jack, our good friend Jack, talking about The Swimmer in university, and I think we watched a part of it for Bruce Barton's devising class at UTM, and a fascinating movie about a guy who is going to swim across America.
Not America, his neighborhood,
but going pool to pool.
In the suburbs, yeah.
In the suburbs. So it's a road trip movie, but like just going house to house. And
he just swims home and goes in all his neighbors' pools. It's fantastic. And then, not finally, there's some other people of note in it, but we've got John Amos. Who doesn't love John Amos in a movie?
Oh, for those who don't know him by his real name, we're talking the great bad guy from Die Hard 2.
Fantastic.
And also Lisa's dad in Fresh Prince, a very hilarious role that he plays in the I think season 4 of Fresh Prince.
The movie is directed by John Badham, who directed Saturday Night Fever, War Games, Short Circuit, Bird on a Wire. So he had a bit of a run in the 80s with some hits.
Yeah, and then this.
And this is actually like in the middle of it.
Right. I meant some hits. And then also...
and he also did this in the 80s. Yeah.
And also this movie.
All right. Hey, I'm holding hope on this one. All right.
That's what we're teasing is we know how I feel about it. Let's find out. Because we've been looking for some disagreements. Maybe this will be the first
I know, we've been agreeing too much.
That we really disagree. So we'll see. That's what we're hanging out for you people. You gotta listen to the whole thing to find out what Cam thinks.
It's written by Steve Tessich. Oscar award-winning screenwriter. Would you believe it?
I literally can't believe
this guy wrote an Oscar award-winning cycling movie 6 years earlier called Breaking Away.
I would think that you're lying.
Yeah, you would. And I did too when I looked it up. But I was like, no shit. And
what?
Not only that, there's a few things interesting about Steve Tessich. So he was also a very successful playwright, but he is also the first person to coin and use the phrase post-truth.
Really?
He is cited with the first person to use that. He wrote an essay in 1992, and he said, in talking about basically America's relationship with the Gulf War and Iran-Contra, and hearkening it to what happened at Watergate and Vietnam, saying, we as a free people have freely decided that we want to live in some post-truth world.
Wow.
He's the first guy in 1992. He used that.
There you go. Well, I guess I'll have some grace that this is the low light of his career, because that seems like he has had some incredibly important.
That's why maybe it's because I watched this movie and then read all this stuff, and then like I rewatched it and I went, let's put on the rose-colored glasses and just like, let's see what's good.
And I think, and I do have, I won't say who it is now, but I do believe that there is, I think there's another piece to blame in how I feel about this movie. So I'm not going to hang it all on the direction or the writing, because I think that there's a couple other pieces that are lacking. But wow, that is fascinating. That
Steve Tessich.
That Steve did all those things. So
yeah, and then it's finally cinematographer was by Donald Peterman, who did Point Break and Men in Black. So
just is it just those two movies?
No. He did a bunch. Those are the highlights for me.
I just really would love if the guy did 3 movies in his entire career.
Point Break is incredible.
Point Break, Men in Black, American Flyers. Hang it up.
I can see from a lot of like the action cycling shots and stuff. I'm like, I can see how this guy got the surfing movie a couple years later.
Yep.
And then finally, the one person I want to note, because it really ties in Costner really well in this early part of his career. The casting of this film was done by a man named Wally Nacita, and he cast The Big Chill, War Games, which Costner accepted and then turned down to do The Big Chill, Silverado, and this. So this guy really is responsible for Costner getting the chances he got, and Costner is responsible for doing what he did afterwards. But this guy was clearly a champion of Costner early on in this guy's. He was a nobody, and he was clearly bringing this guy in and putting this guy forward constantly. The movie was filmed in 1984 and then released in August of 1985. So going back the last few movies, we've got Fandango coming out in May 85. We've got Silverado coming out in July 85. And then he's got this right on the heels. So this is really Costner ready to break out. None of the movies do particularly well. Spoiler, even Silverado, that like was a bigger movie, it still didn't reach expectations.
Wasn't a box office smash.
Yeah, like they hoped it would be. And he's got like kind of the ensemble, smallish supporting part in it. But clearly, I think at this moment, he also takes a break. I don't know. I wasn't there with him. I don't know what he was doing. I don't think he was just sitting around drinking pina coladas, but like he doesn't shoot a movie again until No Way Out in April. So,
wow.
But clearly after this movie, his career takes off.
Yeah.
I don't think it's because of this movie.
I agree. But in the same, of course, like, I don't think that he booked Testament because of Malibu Hot Summer, but I think that when you're in the room with a casting director or with a producer, with a director, you show your stuff and good directors, good casting directors, good producers, they can see if you've got the stuff. And so, and he is poised at this point for those who have been diligently following along and finding out about movies that they've never heard of or never seen. What we're coming to next, of course, after this episode is we're heading towards the Untouchables.
Yeah.
And so, this is sort of almost like for those of us listening who, like Cam and I, love pro wrestling. This is like his last. This is like his last booking on the Indies.
Yeah,
and he's about to.
And then they're going to make him go away for a little bit to build anticipation.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And then he's gonna come out. He's gonna run through the crowd and hit. He's gonna hit Adam Cole with the belt and announce his arrival as the heir apparent to the NXT Championship. So
that's right.
Yeah.
The movie had a budget of $23 million. It had an opening weekend of 78,000. It played
great.
Not great. It played in a total, I think, overall of 61 theaters and had a worldwide gross of 1.42 million. So it
wow.
It didn't turn audiences' heads, I don't think.
Doesn't sound like it.
Doesn't sound like it. It's got a 6.5 on IMDb, a 65% on Rotten Tomatoes, both critic and audience, and a 50% Metacritic score. And would you believe it? Not a lot of...
hold on.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe it.
No, I was going to say something else, but yeah.
That it has... I know, but I wanted to just pause and flag. I don't believe that this is a 65% movie. Because I don't
know what to tell you. Start your petition, Adam. I don't give a shit, okay?
I'm here to get this movie canceled.
Hey, you're post-truth, okay?
35 years after its arrival, I'm here to get this movie canceled because this is I cannot believe that more people enjoyed this movie than didn't. My mind is spinning. Because let me tell you right now, if you try at the end of this to make this the number one movie on the power rankings, I'm going to come through this computer screen.
No, you haven't heard my case yet.
I'm going to choke the life out of you if you try to argue this is the top of the rankings. So I defy the world.
Some people like it. Some people like it.
I just think that they don't have a right to their opinion, and mine is the only one that matters, and they're wrong objectively.
All right, so nobody knows what movie we're talking about here. Let's break it down for them.
Could you guys please just talk about what this movie is before you get into it? I don't know how people are still listening to us.
American Flyers. All right, so Adam, you want to break down this beginning of the movie for us?
Let me just finish my beer.
Oh, Jesus.
Because I'm going to need it as we get into this. All right. American Flyers. We are, let me just say as we start off, we are starting off with 80s American boo-rah excess to the max, complete with shots of McDonald's, the sun over the city, beautiful golden archways,
It's in St. Louis, yeah? Is that where they start?
I think that's where that is, yeah. That big giant.
I'm not American.
Archway thing. I don't know. I'm not St. Louisian. I don't know. Seems like a place to live, whatever.
Middle of the country.
Middle of the country, sure. Didn't even know that. Who knows? Not good with geography. So we're coming in on we don't know who it is yet, but we now know it's David Summers, played by David Grant. He's biking around. He's got a cowboy hat on. He's clearly a fun,
carefree boy,
dude. Carefree boy, just cycling through the city.
Loves going for rips.
Yeah, he loves just cycling and taking it out for a rip. And he comes home. And let me just say, as he comes into his apartment building, so he rolls. This part is fine. So he rolls through the front doors. Okay, whatever. Maybe it's a revolving door or it's an automatic door or whatever. He rolls right into the elevator. He's on his bike the whole time. And he's sitting in the elevator. He has this funny exchange with this old couple. He gets to his floor, bikes out of the elevator, and then the shot is him just like rolling through his like without clearly like time lapse, like breaking stride. He's rolling through his front hallway into his kitchen, and I'm like, hold on a second. Does he just leave his door open? Because how did he just continue biking from the elevator into his apartment?
You're picking nits here, man.
No, I'm not. This is I had to look back and be like, "What? That doesn't make any sense." This was the first thing of many things that made no sense, and I'll say it's a smaller one. But I'm gonna pick out these. I'm gonna be nitpicky as we go here, because what the hell just happened? How did this work? I will also say about this song that's playing. It so badly wants to be Springsteen. And
yeah, but it's kind of good. I liked it. Me fist bumping by the third time I watched this movie. I was like, yeah, I was feeling it.
You're a horrendous excuse for a movie watcher. You wanted us to disagree, and I can't wait, because we're going to get into it today. This song wants so badly to be Springsteen, and it just ain't. But I will say that in the realm of Springsteen, do you know who is in this movie?
No.
Stevie Van Zandt.
No, he's not. Where?
Of the E Street Band is
not.
Is listed. I looked for it as hard as I could. You clearly can't see him. He is listed on the IMDb as a cyclist. So he is in one of these scenes.
Fuck off.
I don't know where, but Stevie Van Zandt of the E Street Band is listed.
Silvio from The Sopranos is no.
He is listed as a cyclist in this movie. So maybe that happened because they heard this song and they were just like, oh, now we're going to, Adam's just going to be so upset already. We've got to give him some Springsteen.
Living in the USA.
It's so
not
bad.
Born in the USA. It's living in the USA.
That's what's so bad about it, is this song is like trying to be born in the USA, which is just a skewering critique of America, except this song just takes it and tries to make it into actual hell yeah, let's go America.
I just pulled up his IMDb hoping I would prove you a liar, and no, he is a cyclist, and geez Louise.
I cannot tell a lie. David has heard a message from his brother, and you can hear as soon as that voicemail, I guess it's not even a voicemail, it's like a true message tape here in the 80s. We can hear it's our boy K Cos, his brother, calling and saying that he's overdue for a visit. He's going to come for a visit. So we cut to we end up after some cheeky 80s almost nudity.
No, I think this is more than almost nudity. I think you see a nub of a penis. I think that's it. Like, I was certain. I was like, I think that's dick. I wasn't sure.
Oh my God.
It's like shadowed, but I think it's real.
This podcast we're in the 4th episode. We're just off the rails here.
We can't recover.
I mean, he's a carefree spirit, and the human body is a divinely created, wonderful thing. So
that's right.
So he goes to. So we're at dinner with Janice Rule, who for the duration of the rest of this podcast, I'm going to call Ja Rule. We are sitting down for dinner. They're clearly. It's clear that he's late because they're eating. They're well into their meal, and then a knock comes at the door, and at the door, donning a mustache that we have not seen, I don't think, since maybe Kevin Costner's greatest mustache.
Dunbar's got a pretty good mustache.
Okay. I'll give you that. I think that we'll have to, when we get to Dances with the Wolves, we'll do maybe we'll
power rankings of mustaches.
Yeah, we'll do a power rankings of mustaches, and we'll do maybe some Instagram posts and see what people think. But I think maybe the mustache in this case stands out for me more because he's got like more of a clean cut look, whereas John
it's like a real 80s guy mustache.
It is. The depths of the 80s are on his upper lip.
You know when they you've seen like supercuts of those old like 80s dating videos?
Yeah.
That's what Kevin Costner looks like in this movie. Like he looks like he just filmed one and just headed on over to dinner.
No disagreement here for the first time in this episode. Absolutely.
I want to know, do you think it's real? Me and Hallie were debating, is that a real mustache?
Oh, that's I didn't even think of that.
Well, I guess I told you. So
yeah, well, like exactly. So for me, obviously, like I didn't think of it. So yeah, I guess I thought it was real. But I guess the question is like, because of course the whole thing is here. Like we've just flipped, and I know part of this is characterization, but we've just gone from Silverado with baby brother Kevin,
to
older brother,
that
old
he
man
flips
Costner,
the role,
which clearly that's the reason why the mustache is there, to be like, we need to age this guy up so that he looks older than David Grant.
Although he is the right age to play this part, just the other guy's not the right age to play that part.
Absolutely, yeah. The idea that Davey is like this third year dropout, he's supposed to be 21. Like this is a 35-year-old dude that we're looking at.
Yeah.
Point. I assumed it was real just because I guess it fooled me. But yeah, like could Kevin have grown this mustache at this point? I guess so.
Okay, all you Costner heads out there, let us know. Hit us up. Let us know if that was a real stash.
So they have dinner. We clearly see that Costner is very, very just Marcus, the older brother, is he comes in. He's already eaten. He's not being he's not being a nice dude. He's not being a nice son. We find out that their father has died. It seems like somewhat recently.
More than a year, I think. More than a year, but less than 3 years.
Since they've been adults. And Costner, Marcus, very overtly, without hiding it, like blames his mother for the last few weeks of his dad's life, and says, that you failed him, you weren't there for him. We don't know exactly what happened, but obviously we know it was like sort of an untimely or painful end. And the scene ends up with he's also worried about his younger brother. He knows faculty at the school that he goes to. He knows his brother's not doing well. It's like his third major. He's switched a bunch of times. He's just kind of coasting. And so he's also worried that his younger brother could have the genetic condition that their father had. And his mother is worried about that too. So he says, well, I'm going to take him home to Wisconsin with me. We find out, of course, Marcus is a doctor. He says, I'll give him an MRI, and I'll let you know, of course, what happens. So they have a little kind of argument about it, but eventually David kind of relents and he's like, okay, fine, I'll go back to Wisconsin with you. And from then they go.
Yeah. This scene with the mother, like, it's like, I don't know, there's some stuff in it. Like it's half good. And then the other half is like
You're half wrong.
Well, yeah, I am half wrong, but no. Well, then it's a quarter good. because there are lines in it. They're like, oh, this is good. You're setting up a theme. I get it. Like the setting up of the like could have. That's the family motto. Like that. David is flunking out of school, and the mom's all up. It's like, oh, he could have done well if. And if he's had a hard year, and Costner does this whole speech, could have, that's the Summers family motto.
The Summers could have. I could have. You could have. Daddy could have. Now it's Davy's turn. We're always looking for excuses. I'll tell you about could. I could be crazy about you, Mom, but I'm not. And you could have made Dad's last few weeks a lot easier. But you didn't.
The only other problem is that in this scene, it's the perfect example of telling, not showing. They just put so much information in of like, your brother's scared of doctors. I'm like, we do? Well, your brother's not doing well. We do? Like
yeah. Mom, I don't like you. Oh, okay, so now I know he doesn't care for his mother.
Yeah.
The dialogue is rough.
Yeah, and his mother, like, I'm worried about your brother. Didn't you notice he's got symptoms? But we just saw this carefree, happy-go-lucky guy ripping around town.
Ripping through St. Louis.
And we didn't see, like, one dizzy spell. But, yeah, no, there's just a lot of, like, don't you know your brother's afraid of doctors? Well, you're just getting information out that is so devoid of, like, what characters want, what characters want. It just makes no sense. Even Mark, it seems like this contrived thing, like, why did Marcus show up? He's there because he's not worried about his brother at first. He's not worried until the mom says she's worried about him, that he might have what their dad had. So Marcus has driven all the way from Madison, Wisconsin.
For what reason?
To St. Louis for dinner that he doesn't eat.
To miss the dinner.
To say I'm worried that he's not doing well at school, which is also this weird thing. And I think it's like this thing that's, I feel like at some point writers thought was motivation about like the kid who's got potential, who's not making the most of it. It's like, but he's supposed to be like 20 years old, like, can we all take a break and remember what any 20-year-old is like? Like they should have no expectation on them.
Yeah. He's supposed to be a second-year student who's like somehow switched degrees already 3 times, and
his dad died during the middle of it. So like we can take a real break to like consider that might affect his life a little bit.
Yeah. Like, you dropped out of pre-med. Yeah, I know. I dropped out of pre-law too. Well, you know what? Those are 2 really hard things. And so I got a lot of grace. I got a lot of grace for Davy Summers going, maybe I'm not going to be a doctor or a lawyer, because most people aren't. Yeah. And that's not everyone's path. But
So we pick up. The boys have a good long road trip back to Wisconsin. Yep. They have kind of a speech where Davey talks about, do you think, Marcus, you'll ever try for the Olympic team again? And Marcus is like, no, those days are behind me. He's like, well, at least you made it once. And Marcus is like, no, I didn't make it. He's like, well, you were an alternate. That's like close enough. He's like, no, there's no such thing as close enough. Like, I didn't make it. He's got a line. Again, this is thematically, this will come back. It's like
there are these decisive moments in bike racing, all right? When the moment came, I gave up.
The big kind of theme of this family, of this story, is there's no such thing as try. There's only do. There's no could have. Don't live in that kind of, I could have been somebody mentality.
Yeah. And so, and I guess we should note, of course, because it kind of comes up subtly in a couple of the opening scenes. We find out that there's clearly a bicycle history in this family. We see a childhood photo of clearly Marcus pulling Dave in a wagon that says American Flyers. I guess that's like a classic old 80s.
And the name of the movie. Did you notice that?
I think that it is the name of the movie, but I'm going to double check.
Because they never say the line of the movie, so I think that's where they got it. They got it from that picture.
And honestly, in this movie, I'm surprised they didn't end it with going, boy, you sure were an American Flyer.
American Flyers. Living in the USA.
Yeah, so when we get back to Wisconsin, we see that Marcus has all these cycling trophies, and so we and he says he wants to take him back to Wisconsin. We can ride around. So clearly, like, this is the thing they did growing up. Like, they would cycle together and race each other, and this was clearly a warm, consistent like piece of their relationship.
Yeah, and we get back to Wisconsin. There's just a brief scene of us meeting Sarah, who's Marcus's girlfriend. They live together, played by Ray Dong.
We find out Marcus is a total creep.
Not just Marcus. David's the bigger weird creep. I don't know. They're both creeps.
They're both creeps, but in this scene, So Marcus doesn't tell his brother as they get into the house that someone else is here, and he's like, "You're crashed. Yeah, you like the couch? That's yours. You're crashed on it." So David understands. He's like, "Okay, well, it's nighttime. I'm going to start like undressing because it's just my brother here." And then Sarah walks in, and he's like, "Oh, there's a woman here that a stranger that I didn't know about, and now I'm like." Basically naked. And then Marcus is like, yeah, if you hear anything coming from the old bedroom, it's just a wild sex romp. And I'm like, dude, first of all, it's your brother and your girlfriend that he just met.
Yeah.
You're a creep, Marcus. You're a creep.
Yeah, but then David does this weird licks his finger and then touches the lamp and goes like man, that's hot. I'm like, that's not hot. That's your brother.
that's not hot. Let's just let
it be known that's not hot.
Yeah. This movie. Oh boy.
There's a few things Davey says in this movie that I go like, is this the brain condition talking?
It may be. That might be the only...
Especially the opening of the dinner scene. I don't know why it's in there still. This is not good editing. The opening line of him having dinner is, I think I'm starting to like Brussels sprouts. It's like, why is that in there?
There's so many things. Okay, I won't tip my hat too much, but I just want to say I couldn't agree more. We'll get back to it, but... Let's keep going on Act 2 here.
So the next day, the Marcus takes David to where he works, which is like a sports science center, and he's kind of like putting him under the guise of like running these tests on him. That this is a place where we test athletes and to get them in peak condition. And so, do you mind if we run these tests on you?
And he teases that there's a particular test.
There's this torture test. Running on a treadmill. Spoiler.
It's so tame. They set it up to be so big. And I know it's the 80s and, sports medical science is advanced, but like this torture test ends up being like, can you run on a treadmill for 25 minutes?
It's torture.
It's beyond what a human man could do.
And then we have maybe one of the most baffling scenes in the movie. So David catches the eye of this girl at the sports science center, health center, named Leslie, played by an incredible Jennifer Grey.
Jennifer Grey.
She's so good. Who doesn't love Jennifer Grey? Like, I love her in this movie, and like,
she's so good.
Nothing makes sense in this movie, and she's incredible.
Especially this scene makes no sense. But she's fantastic in this scene.
At night, Marcus has invited surprise Leslie over for dinner to set her and Davey up. And David doesn't like this. They allude to it a little bit in the beginning of why he wouldn't like this, because there's been a history where he's had a relationship with this girl who wants to be a model, and then he finds out that she's only using him to get... because his mom's a casting agent, and so he has this talk on the phone call about being like, I thought you weren't using me for my mom. He doesn't like that his dad, or sorry, his brother, is setting him up, and that he wants to meet a girl that doesn't have any connection to his family. I guess the idea is that David is like tired of living in other people's shadows or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's not really like any other moment really of the movie. I don't know.
I mean, we learn that they clearly have a fractious relationship because when their dad got sick, it appears like as soon as the dad got sick, Marcus decided to leave.
No, Marcus didn't leave then. I think Marcus left when he died. I think he was mad because the mother wasn't good with the dying father, and so he was really upset at the mother and went, you dropped the ball. Marcus was. You dropped the ball, Mom, when Dad was dying.
And David's point is, Mark, like, Mom was falling apart because of this. She was also suffering through this, and then you left her high and dry.
Yeah.
Which, I totally come out on David's side there.
For sure. And I think that's also like the again bad writing of like, oh, I know what's motivation. The guy who just leaves home. It's like nobody in the world leaves town the day their dad dies.
Yeah.
Like nobody in the world.
Yeah, so it's one of those things that you see writers do to be like, oh, this will give the audience this will give them the reaction to the character that we want. We'll give enough that we know he's not a villain, he's not a bad guy, but there's things that we don't like about him, and it's just like, no, that's so unearned, and it's just very, very like cardboard as a character dimension that is just totally unbelievable.
And then so like Leslie, Jennifer Grey, Sally, this is all we see of her in this movie. She cries and runs off because she needs to go call her mother.
Because they get in a huge argument about this at the dinner table, which I will say at least like, again, I think direction and plot-wise here, there's a lot of things that plot-wise I'm like, that works, but the way they execute it in the dialogue and the editing, it just like doesn't hold up at all.
Yeah, but there are a few things that I'm like, oh, okay, you're getting out your themes. Like, there are some good lines of like, when people let you down, don't you ever think of like forgiving them? Don't you ever? It's not terrible. Like, I think this is the best you see David Grant. Honestly, this is David Grant's best scene. What hurts me is that Costner,
I agree.
Everything we've said about Costner so far about his ease is like he doesn't have in this movie.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, and I think that's a really bad script can tank any actor. I don't care if you're Meryl Streep or Sidney Poitier or what we talk about, Pete Postlethwaite, Daniel Day-Lewis. So I think that he is weighed down by a script that lacks good dialogue and that lacks really like cohesive motivations. But absolutely, like this, I think I don't know in this whole in the years that we'll do this podcast if we'll have a lower entry in terms of performance. And I really, truly, not just because we're homers here, I don't really blame Costner for that, but it is not a great performance here.
You're probably harder on him than I am. But what I was going to say too about David's performance in this and this scene in general, because I think I don't think the acting is as bad as you say, but I think what is good doesn't make sense because how they get there in the argument is literally like, why did this argument start?
Yeah.
And so anything of like any truism in the writing or in the characters goes like, I don't know why these guys are fighting right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
The next day, David is going to run this torture test. Like we say, it's running on a treadmill. There's a slight incline. It's very reminiscent. This did come first. This beat it by a couple months. The Drago test in Rocky IV.
Oh, totally. I thought of that because in this whole sports science center they've got, which makes sense. Like they got a bunch of people that are hooked up to like heart rate monitors and ECGs and things like that. And this was what's interesting, as we'll see later, is this is although this has moments that are reminiscent of Rocky IV, we are clearly in a different space with the Soviet Union.
Yeah,
that we'll talk about that a little later.
Yeah, it's the same year.
Exactly.
It's weird. Yeah, it's the same year. Both 85.
Wow. Well, then that actually okay. I'm going to say when we get back to that later, that gives me. I'm going to add 10 points to Gryffindor for this movie for the track that they take with the Soviet Union here.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's he's doing this test that is supposed to be
the torture test, and it's supposed to and it's a setup for a race at the end of the movie that your body goes into oxygen deprivation, and how can it still function after it's deprived of oxygen? Marcus has the record so far, and David is hell-bent on doing it, and he does it. He gets a shirt with the gym, not the gym, the health center's slogan on it, which is in Latin, and it says, "If you got it up, keep it up," which I think is very funny. Like, I think that's very funny.
I agree.
Like, I don't think it's funny in the way they mean it to be funny. I think it's funny that somebody wrote that into a script.
Well, I think they mean that joke because it comes up later.
They mean it, but it's like it's a dumb joke, and I like that somebody thought it was a dumb. I like that somebody thought it was a good joke and wrote it into a movie.
Yeah, someone thought it was clever. It is not, but it does make me laugh. So whatever, it works.
Yeah, and then Dave goes and like. They're not very coy with these tests they're running on him. It's literally like, we're going to put you through this test, and it's one test, and then we're going to scan your brain. It's like,
but yeah, okay, yeah, and also, so like this torture test is supposed to be like only one person in this whole like sports clinic who has ever gotten to this level, which is Marcus, who basically like. Could have been Lance Armstrong if he wanted to, like kind of character. Like they put him to this like to the limits of the human condition test before they do an MRI on a guy who they're worried might have a genetic condition that could kill him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What?
It's part of the ruse, bud. It's part of the ruse. You can't just be like, hey, do you mind if we test your brain? Yeah. Well, that's how they're doing it. Hey, Adam. When you're a doctor at a health science center, then you can talk.
Well, I'm going to do that just to prove you wrong. By the time we get to Yellowstone, I'm going to have my MD. Listen.
You're going to put me through the torture test.
They don't know at this point who has what or who's got what conditions. They're worried there's a chance that there could be a I think we gotta go. I think this is the end of the podcast.
No, it's not, because there's some really great stuff coming up in this movie. I'm going to talk about it. And then so David does the test. He gets the T-shirt. He kind of knows. He kind of senses what's going on. He goes into a side door of Marcus's office, and he overhears Marcus and Conrad, played by John Amos, talking about the results. And overhears like Marcus saying, "I'm not going to tell him. He's so happy today." And Conrad's like, "You got to tell him eventually." He's like, "I know." And so David's like, "Oh shit, what is it?" And then we got the next scene with Marcus and David out front. I think this might be Costner's best scene. I think maybe. Or their best scene together
when they're sitting outside of on the sidewalk.
I think so. And Marcus is not really revealing much to him. He's like, "Yeah, you're fine. Your test came back. You're fit as a fiddle. Physically, you're great. Emotionally, you're a wreck.
Physically, you're fine. You have the cardiovascular system of King Kong's first cousin. It's just emotionally, you're a mess."
You really burned your ass on that treadmill.
Sure. You also beat my SAT score, so you're great at taking tests every few years. I mean, BFD.
So you can take tests every once in a while, like big deal. Like, what are you going to do? I want you to come with me to do this bike race. And I like that there's like, David's like, "Yeah, I'll go." And he's like, "Oh, come on, man. I was going to try and convince you. I was going to try and like level with you as a brother."
It's the last time I'm going to race in it, and I'd really like
I'd love to.
What?
Race.
Give me a break, would you? I'm trying to talk you into it. I had all speech prepared about how we never raced together, and this might be our last chance, the Summers team.
Then there's this, again, he's got this weird line. There's a couple times where David's got weird lines that sound like they should be like funny button lines, but then the scene keeps going.
Exactly. Okay.
And he's like, "Well, I'll just set it up." So he goes, "Okay, I'll go with you. But to this race, Hell of the West. It's in Colorado. That's what the rest of the movie is. Okay, I'll go with you. But one thing, I'm not going to shave my legs." Which is like a button end line. Okay, end of the scene. And then the scene keeps going. And it's just like an awkward, dumb line now. It makes him seem like, again, he might have a brain condition.
You're giving it way too much justification here, because that would be a plot point, and it's not.
Well, yeah.
Okay, so let me get into it now.
I'm not trying to justify it. I'm trying to say it's very bad.
I think the editing in this movie is if we talk about the MVP. I think that the anti-MVP in this movie is the editing. And I think you just gave one of the prime examples of here's a scene that actually has something going for it. The dialogue is okay. In this scene, we're seeing Costner having that kind of relaxed control of energy and interaction. And
well, he's still confrontational with his brother. Which is
still
good.
He's still Marcus, who is this.
Yeah,
Marcus is a dick. Like when I lose my mind at Marcus saying these awful things to his mother. That's not on Costner. Like that's actually a good thing. I'm saying like this character is like a dick, and maybe if there's a slight, it's that I think he's a little too unlikable at these points. But that's not on Costner. There's these scenes where just the editing is, I think, is what is wrong with this. And again, editing is something that, like, as a casual movie watcher, you either way you don't notice. Like even when editing is bad, you don't notice it because you don't like see to pick up on these things. But if we go back to that dinner conversation with Jennifer Grey, where we go, how did this argument start? Why did this argument start? A lot of that could have been fixed with a better edit. Maybe there were lines that should have been in there that then got cut, or maybe just the pacing of these scenes is what makes what could be a movie like whatever that other great cycling movie is, or War Games or something, that I think War Games has excellent pacing. It makes a scene that could stand up and have authenticity and have and frankly have comprehensibility, make no sense, or even worse, feel like Malibu Hot Summer. Because if you look at Malibu Hot Summer, there's a billion things wrong with that movie. But we have these scenes that just have awkward endings, and it's like we're still with these characters, or we're still at this pool, or we're just sitting there with cousin Steve or whatever. And there's just this weird like dragging out, and it just makes you feel weird and uncomfortable. And I think that the editing is a huge problem in this movie.
Yeah, maybe people are thinking, you guys should edit this podcast. Let's keep moving along.
We're going too long again.
Oh, you love it. All right, so Adam, let's take us into Act 3.
All right, so they're heading to the Hell on the West. The Hell.
Not yet. Calm down. They got to watch the tape first. This is vital.
I just want to choke the life.
Okay, start again. I'll edit it out.
No, this is staying in. I said they're heading to the Hell of the West. They're on the road. Why don't you listen? And they're watching the tape of the Hell of the West. Well, they're heading there, Cam. Okay, that's what's happening here. And so they're watching it, and we're seeing Marcus talk about his, I guess, last venture on this race. He's showing him how he lost it. He's showing him the moment that he kind of he's like, do you see that there? I gave up. And he has, again, to the point that we just made, actually, I think a good dialogue and acting moment of, he says, so there's the other, his former best friend, who's kind of now his rival, who beat him and who won, cheering and holding up both his arms in the air. And he says, do you see that? That's what it looks like to win. And then he says, do you hear this? This is what it sounds like to win, to be a champion. And he turns it up, and it's the crowd cheering. And that, if you think of that moment, the way I describe it, I hope, kind of sounds like, okay, that's good. But again, I think both in the actual editing of the shots, and I think in this case the sound editing is garbage.
Doesn't sound good to win.
It sounds it's this hollow, it sounds like when you were playing in Mortal Kombat 2, and there was an audience, and when you win, you hear or NHL 95. That audience sound was the sound. It's supposed to be this moment where he impresses upon his brother, the glory of victory, and it's the sound of hitting that open net shot to win one game in NHL 95.
This is what it sounds like.
It's just a terribly put together.
There is
because of that
good writing where just before that, where it says See that's the moment I gave up. You can see it right there. Like he pinpoints the moment of a past race where he let the other guy beat him, and David goes, "No, you didn't." He says, "That's how good I am at it. You don't even notice anymore."
Right there. See that? Race is over. I quit.
No, you didn't.
Shows you how good I am at it. Nobody can even tell anymore.
Yeah. And like that's a really good line. That's
good line, well acted.
Like that's perfect.
Absolutely.
And that's where I'm like, this writer must be good. I gotta watch Breaking Away, I guess.
We'll put it on the Patreon, when we make that up. But So they keep going. So as they're heading out there, they're obviously biking because they're training for it too. So Sarah's often just in the van, following them as they are learning technique and racing each other and mixing in some good and fun times, with Marcus kind of showing him the ropes of what it takes to be, a professional cyclist, like in these races. Another great example of the editing just being just like horrendous is they go by these three hitchhikers.
Yeah. We get a whole scene of these hitchhikers.
We get a whole scene of these hitchhikers, and Sarah drives by them and doesn't pick them up, and then they flip her the bird, and then she kind of laughs and goes by. We have a little more scenes of Marcus and Dave, and then we get the actual scene of the hitchhikers talking to each other, where then they're like, oh, this one hitchhiker's like, oh, I want a burger and fries so much, and the other, they're clearly kind of supposed to be like 80s like hippies. And so
80s hippies is already like I don't know what that means.
Yeah. And as they're having this scene, which is after the scene where the car has passed them by, the car that is tailing the two cyclists, they have this scene where we're talking to where we're hearing from the three hitchhikers, and then the bikes pass by. So it's clear that this was supposed to happen before that other shot, because it doesn't make any sense that they somehow were like.
I didn't even notice that.
This is what I'm talking about.
I'm not a good movie watcher. I
guess you're not. So, it just and it's this is what, I'm not saying that okay, if you didn't notice it, fine, then clearly it's not that bad. But but for the editing perspective, it's so easy to see because there's no reason you can't put the scene where Sarah passes by in the van after this scene of them talking, and then the bikes passing by, and they go, oh, there's a couple of cute guys on the bikes, and then David goes, oh, there's some cute hitchhikers, and then put the scene where the van passes by. So why the van passing by is before that makes no sense, and it is just evidence of the editing on this
of malfeasance.
This is malfeasance.
Yeah. Okay,
so I'll keep going here. Because I gotta. Because I'm paid to be here. I'm not. So they end up going to a McDonald's, which clearly McDonald's must have co-financed this movie.
Yeah,
because the opening scene has a McDonald's boat in St. Louis. Then the hitchhikers talk about I just want a quarter pounder with fries, and then they are in the McDonald's, and there's literally a scene where she's just ordering the quarter pounder with fries. Yeah. And then there's a scene later where she's like, can you imagine
if I didn't get that quarter pounder?
Yeah, I ordered a quarter pounder, and she says, we only have Big Macs. Will you wait for the quarter pounder? Imagine if I hadn't waited for the quarter pounder. There's so much McDonald's product placement in this movie.
Especially I can imagine McDonald's trying to be let's attach ourselves to a cycling movie to be we aren't total junk garbage food.
Exactly. Yeah. And so in this scene, then David actually, so it's the hitchhiker that he passed by, and he actually meets her then in the McDonald's and invites her to ride along, because she has broken up with the other hitchhikers because they were vegetarians, and she
wanted a Big Mac or a quarter pounder.
She wanted a quarter pounder. So she jumps in the van, basically all right, this is, she's along for the ride. Okay. And then we have a scene where Ja Rule, Mrs. Summers, is calling the health center, asking for Marcus, and finds out that her sons have left for Colorado. Also finds out that her son is living with this person that clearly she didn't know about. So we're just, at least this is a good plot point. Like we're establishing just how deep this rift is.
Yeah, but at the same time, we're also establishing just like how little she's in the story. That when I watched this movie, I was why are we bringing her up? Like, that's it? That's all all right. It's like, oh, I don't know where my sons are. And like, okay, well, you've been in like 2 scenes of this movie.
She's there to help us establish that the dad is gone and that Marcus is
not forgiving of somebody.
Yeah, that Marcus is a hard ass.
She's the antithesis of what Marcus doesn't want David to be. He's like, no, she's all about, we're all great, we're all trying, and he's like, no, trying isn't good enough. You gotta be better.
And I think, like, because I agree, I think you look at this and you're like, well, she basically just, especially after those opening scenes, like has no place in this movie. Like she comes back around towards the end, and I think maybe what was missing is what we never get with this character is that like that real conversation between her and Marcus, where they don't even necessarily have to reconcile, but where they just they have to like have a little bit of an arc between themselves, and that doesn't happen. And maybe that was written in, and maybe the editing just cut it out.
Yeah.
Because I agree. She ends up coming back around later in this movie, and you're like, well, we don't like it. It doesn't matter.
What's worse about this scene is that we're also introduced to John Amos's son for some reason, named Randolph, who comes back a couple times, and I don't know why.
If you wanted us to disagree more, to have some more sparks in this podcast, I can't imagine a better scenario for you, because if you think that Randolph is a problem for this movie, you are a world-class idiot.
Really? You like Randolph?
Randolph, let me just spoil the end of this. I think Randolph is the MVP of this movie.
No way! Get the fuck out of here! I got a dark horse MVP as well, but no way is Randolph the MVP.
Randolph is brilliant. He's a wonderfully hilarious young man with a heart of gold and a brilliant mind, I think, as well. And every scene he is in is a world. He is a class above everybody else in this movie.
What the heck does he do in this movie? Why is he here? No reason.
He's here to make me feel joy in my heart. And we'll talk through it as it goes on. John Amos' son, Randolph, is a brilliant character in this movie. I'm not saying I think he might be a little bit like Kevin Kline in Silverado, where you're like, I think he belongs in a different movie. But you know what? What he does works, and it elevates what I'm watching. He was my favorite part of this movie.
Oh my god! This is how you know you got bad takes. This is okay. You Costner heads out there, get at me, all right? And we will start a mutiny of this podcast against Adam, because this Randolph take,
this is my last episode.
This is cold fish, baby. This sucks.
You're dead wrong. You're dead wrong.
All right, we're gonna move on from Randolph.
Well, for now, but when we come back, I'm gonna tell you why he's so great. All right, so we're getting in there. We're getting towards the race here. At one point, Sarah and Becky get a flat tire. I assume at this point, we don't know, because the editing isn't great in the scene. We didn't have a scene where they're rolling by, but all of a sudden, just they get a flat tire in the van, and we meet Muzzin the cannibal, who was the former partner and best friend of Marcus.
He's the guy who beat him in the race.
He's the guy who beat him in the race. Yeah. He's also Sarah's ex. So they pull over to help them change the tire. We find out like Marcus is kind of a good dude and has a decent relationship still with Sarah. Muzzin is
not Marcus, Jerome.
Sorry, Jerome is a good dude. And Muzzin is somewhere between like when you fight the first boss on Street Fighter, who's like not hard, but he's just like a creep with fingerless gloves. And also like when they do the sports episodes of South Park, especially like the 80s sports episodes, like this character is what they base them off of. Just like for no reason, this guy is an evil douche, which like are not the exact same thing, but when you put them together is the worst thing when you have an evil douche.
Yeah.
That's who this guy is. He says he's going to make Marcus bleed during the race. Like he's out to get Marcus. And maybe there's a scene that got edited out, but there's at this point in this final cut, we have no understanding of why. Like, if he's an evil douche, that's fine, but why he's specifically out to get Marcus?
Because he took his wife.
Sure. Okay.
Oh, that's a good reason, bud.
That's a good reason, but I agree because
he does have a line where he says, like,
Women are a real mystery. In bike racing, the best man always wins. But what the hell is it about some women that makes them fall for quitters like Marcus?
So that's
Right.
like he does mention it.
okay, but we don't know like a timeline. Like, here's the thing, because like if it was like a long time in between, then I'm kind of like, okay, well, you know, I get you're an evil douche, so fine, but like get over it. But if it wasn't a big timeline in between, if Mark is just like, I mean, Sarah's her own person. She can do whatever she wants, obviously. But in terms of setting up a character, if this was like your best friend and like partner, and you're just like, yeah, I'm taking your girlfriend now, and obviously we didn't have a good conversation to talk about this, then I'm kind of like, Marcus, that was like kind of a...
Yeah, they don't set up how it happens at all.
Exactly. So again, I'm not saying that's a slight against the relationship or Sarah at all, but just the idea that like that makes Muzzin sympathetic to go like, yeah, I have a legitimate problem with you because this was like a really hurtful thing in my life.
Unless Muzzin was always this dickhead.
Which, yeah, maybe you're right.
Which he probably was.
He probably was. Okay, so fine. I'll give you that.
But I will say, this is my we'll do spoiler. This is my dark horse MVP pick. Not Muzzin.
Okay.
Not Muzzin. Robert Townsend as Jerome.
Okay. Yeah.
He is just so enjoyable. There's a really great. So Sarah picks up this rock and says, you know, she's threatening Muzzin because Muzzin's being a big old creep to her, and she's like, Jerome, I consider you a friend. Would you please take this damn cannibal out of my face before I kill him? And Jerome's just, this line delivery here is perfect.
I'm Jerome. You're a damn cannibal. That's a big rock. Let's get out of here. We got a race to win.
That's a big rock. Let's get out of here. We got a race to win. And that was actually like how you, that's like a good dude. That's a guy who knows how to be like, tell his boy, hey man, time to go.
Absolutely.
And like, I'm going to level with you. I'm going to step in here. I just thought that was great. And a little thing about Robert Townsend. Do you know that's Meteor Man? Did you ever watch Meteor Man as a kid?
Meteor Man? No. What is this?
It's, oh my God, you got to watch Meteor Man. It's like,
Man.
Yeah, it's a superhero movie from like 1993 about a guy, it's like superhero comedy about a guy who gets hit by a meteor and gets like meteor powers. And it's him, and there's like Sinbad's in it. Just like, you gotta watch Meteor Man. And I found out, I hadn't thought of that movie since I was 5 years old. Probably when I watched it.
Now, and I'm seeing there's Jerome.
And he wrote and directed it. That was that was Jerome's thing, man. Meteor Man.
Wow. Okay. Well, there you go. I'm gonna again. Save for the Patreon. I'm looking at a Meteor Man screenshot. Am I seeing Don Cheadle is in this movie too?
Oh, I don't know.
Maybe this is just Google Images, so I might be.
I do know Bill Cosby's also in it, but I wasn't going to lead with that.
Yeah, that we should never lead with that. Yeah. Anyway, we're way off track here, but
we're going to keep on moving on.
We're going to keep on moving on.
Remember how we said this was the podcast? Like, we could for sure do this one in an hour.
We're going to get it down to an hour. It's not happening.
The problem when we do it on Friday nights is that I drink a lot of whiskey while we do it, and
and I'm on my fourth beer, so let's just lean in here. But anyway, so now take us into Act 4, Cam.
All right, so we got our first race. It's a race. We find out,
Great synopsis.
I don't know. It's a race. I don't know. Do you want me to break down the fucking bike race? Because I don't think you do.
Act 5. Let's go. We're on to the next one.
No, the first act. Okay, so the first race. All we need to know is that the pool is cut in half. The first half qualify, so the first 48 positions qualify. The next do not qualify. Marcus is burning it. He's loving it. He gets a flat tire. He does a quick change by Sarah. That's impressive. I liked it. And then
that was good.
He powers back.
Is that a real thing with cycling?
Yeah, I have no idea because I don't see how it would be.
Because we don't do real research. We just look up the IMDb.
Yeah. Is this, well, I mean, coming up, there's a point of like, did they do their research on racing?
That's probably true.
Coming up right now because, okay, so Marcus powers back. He ends up winning the race. Way to go, Marcus. And they're like, where's David? Where's David finishing? And David is like struggling because he's he doesn't push himself.
And this is I think we established like this is his first like real like he grew up biking and racing with his brother, but this is his first real like actual professional cycling race.
And so they're like, oh, where is he? And it's like, oh, there's two guys who are 47 and 48. They're gunning for it, and they like this guy who's neck and neck with David crashes into him, so they both crash, but they'd be the last two to qualify, and David's bike wheel is bent, and so he runs and carries the bike over the finish line. And this is where I wonder, is that allowed? Because literally there's a shot of the timekeeper first going, can he do this? And then a referee, a guy wearing the zebra stripes,
but in the booth,
going, can he do that? Does that count? It's
like a hockey referee with the stripes. Yeah, off the track in the booth. Why is he wearing?
If you don't know, then who knows? You know what I mean? Why are you asking? You're wearing the shirt. It's like, can he do that? I don't know.
You got one job, dude.
Yeah, they should have literally been like, can he do that? Like, yep. And then that's it. Because that would make me go like, okay, these guys know about cycling. So he qualifies, and we find out that he's 2 minutes and 11 seconds. David is 2 minutes and 11 seconds behind the leader. And then we get what might be the worst, maybe best heel promo out of Muzzin. That just like, this caught me so off guard, even though he was like the biggest creep just a minute ago. A reporter asks him, like, how does it feel? Because he gets second and Marcus gets first. And then the Russian guy that is the big kind of red threat gets third. And it's like, how does it feel that two Americans beat a Russian today? And he just has this like weird promo about like, because he got boycotted. We find out he was on the Olympic team in 1980, and that's when the U.S. boycotted the Olympics due to, I found out, I did a little bit of research why they boycotted. They boycotted because Russia invaded Afghanistan. Would you believe it? So,
and like, yeah, the only reason I knew that is because there's the Simpsons episode where Homer wins all the Krusty Burgers because of that one.
Right.
Like I could not imagine America invading Afghanistan 3
times.
I
know they wouldn't do that.
Not 3 times.
Yeah, and this is why Steve Tessich wrote about Post-Truth.
I mean, yeah, there you go.
That's a good point. But he cuts this promo about like, I don't ride for America.
I'm not riding for America, ladies. I tried riding for America. I spent 4 years of my life working shitty jobs so I could train and make the Olympic team and ride for America. Look at me. And then some fat asses in Washington started having opinions. The Olympic Committee started having opinions. You bitch, I know you. You started writing your opinions.
And then he goes, and you bitch, you wrote about it. Yeah. I know who you are. And it's like the worst moment of the movie. It might be maybe not the worst moment of the movie, but his acting in this is like, I know who you are. You're the reason I didn't go to the Olympics.
Yeah, because at first I'm almost like, this is almost babyface promo where he's like, I had my shot, and then like politicians decided that I wasn't. And at first I'm like, yeah, like the Olympics is like basically, there's a lot of things that, athletes do or don't get to do things because of politics and blah, blah, blah. And then he goes like a little deeper into it. I'm like, well, that was an interesting thing. Like, yeah, maybe the boycott's an interesting comment. And then you bitch. And I'm like, oh, and he's a heel. Right. Of course. Of course. He's a villain. Of course.
He's a heel. Yeah. Of course. In America, a movie called American Flyers.
Yeah.
the face promo isn't like America let me down.
Yeah. It's not that deep, but
no.
And that's why we're not using Born in the USA, because we're not here to critique America.
No, we're living in the USA.
But can I say at this point, having said we just brought him up, so there is a Soviet cyclist who I will say, I guess in light of what we just said, like oddly enough, is actually played in a very sympathetic way, where Muzzin is much more of a villain, and the Soviet, although not he doesn't have this like redemptive like moment or anything like that, but he is clearly like he is a good competitor. He's a fair, honorable athlete. He tries to shake Muzzin's hand at the beginning, and Muzzin's like, "I'm not shaking your hand" or whatever. And so it's just like that's why we were saying earlier. It's interesting. This is released in the same year as Rocky IV, which is obviously just like a searing like critique of Soviet Russia. And
for those listening at home, you couldn't see Adam's air quotes critique. Air quotes critique.
So I thought I cleared my throat. And then you have this where we actually have a Soviet athlete character here who is who we are clearly intended to like more than this American villain.
Yeah, but guess what? Both times America wins. So take that, Reskies.
I mean, hey, that's all that matters, baby.
Anyways, back to the movie. Okay, so big heel promo. Then we get to the hotel. Becky and David are going to get one room, so you know what that means. David knows what that means. And then Kevin Costner, we see Marcus. Kevin Costner. What?
Which one?
Let you know which Kevin. Kevin Costner. We see him trying to open his hotel room door, and he's got the shakes. He can't match it up. He almost faints. Oh, so Werv. Who's got the brain condition? It's not David.
It's Kevin
Marcus
Bacon. Wait.
No, Kevin Costner.
Kevin Durant.
No, it's Kevin Costner. It's Marcus Summers. Dude, Kevin Jonas. Is a tender moment. I actually was like, "Oh, damn!"
Yeah, this is one of the best moments of the film for sure.
And especially the shot when they wake up in the morning and he's just staring out at the light and then has to like shade it because it's too bright for him. Like that's actually like the best composed shots, maybe in the movie.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think there's some good. I think there's some well composed shots of the bike races.
Yeah, the cycling I think is shot well. If there is a good point of this movie, I think it's the fact that they're able to make bike racing that compelling in a sports movie. Like it's easy to make like boxing or especially like football. Absolutely. Like very easy to make those games compelling
because those are sports that have that have stop and start, so you can do pacing how you can dictate the pacing however you want. They have big singular moments.
Yes,
but that it's why actually like it's really why basketball movies are actually quite hard to do.
Yes.
And in this case, the same thing, like with cycling, in the sense that there aren't these big signature spiking moments. It's this long haul to decide the winner. So I think that that is a great thing about this movie, and I think that particularly the cinematography of some of those biking moments where they're all speeding by and the camera pans, I think they're quite good.
But before that is a really terrible scene between David and Becky. About to get it on, which is fine. Like they're going to hook up. We're supposed to care. I didn't. Did you? No. Okay. But what is especially bad is that what's playing on the TV is like this weird American montage to the national anthem in their hotel room. And if you take up for a second, what is playing on that TV? What channel are they on that would play what is being played? It was just like film of the rockets taking off, and I get it's supposed to be like funny innuendo, but
it's like the stock footage joke of like the train going into the tunnel or the rocket.
Yeah, but but at the same time, if it was like less literal and not supposed to be directly on TV, then maybe. But literally, apparently on TV is just the national anthem playing over stock footage of St. Louis and NASA footage. It just. I mean, maybe I'm picking a nit here, but that's dumb. That was dumb. it's just cheap. It's just cheap.
And again, like it could have been the editing of this scene makes no sense because if you have the shot where they are about to kind of roll into bed and then you cut away to that stuff and you hold it there, but it goes back and forth between them, and then it has a bunch of stock footage, and then it still ends with them basically sort of in foreplay. So again, the editing, if it was shifted, you could go, okay, that was maybe kind of a funny, maybe it was even a kind of a dumb scene, but the way that it's put together, that it's pieced together, it just like it leaves you going like, what is this scene that I'm watching?
Yeah. David also in the scene does kind of maybe reveals like, I think I'm dying. And then like Becky like laughs it off. Yeah, like, oh yeah, me too. And that's like, okay. It's good to see that David is still like wearing this. Like he's still going into all these races thinking he's got this burden on him.
Yeah.
That we now know he doesn't. Mm-hmm. And then the next day, Marcus wakes up early. He shows David the next course and the next race. The gimmick of this race is that it has these 4 markers that if you are the first to get to them, you get 30 seconds taken off your time. So his whole thing is, David, if you take off, nobody knows who you are. People will probably assume you'll just burn out. But I know what in great shape you are. People won't chase after you. Like the guys leading the pack won't care about those bonuses because they don't have time to need to catch up time. They'll let you go off and you can keep going and you can make up time. So David takes off at the beginning of the race, and Kevin Costner, Marcus does sell it pretty well, I want to say. He's like, no, David, what are you doing? You'll burn yourself out. And he's like, well. And everyone's like, oh, leave them. They're nobodies.
Yeah.
But and then later in the race, David's killing it. He's way out ahead. He's winning all these races to the 30-second markers. And he's getting way far ahead. And then when Muzzin thinks he's finally catching the pack that like took off early, he's like, oh, okay, we've got him. It's no big deal. He realizes like, oh no, the one guy is actually way far ahead. I caught the pack who took off early to chase him, but not the actual guy. Mm-hmm. But Marcus, during this race, his nose begins to bleed. And is he having an aneurysm? I don't know how aneurysms work, but that is one thing about this movie.
I don't think they work like this.
I don't think they do, but I'm not a doctor. If you're a doctor out there, if you're a Dr. Kevin Costner fan out there, tell me if I'm wrong. But so he's has an aneurysm, I guess, and he starts almost crashing, and Sarah and Becky have to catch up to him in the van, and he's like going all over the place, and he's maybe almost driving off a cliff, and then like it I think is like, I was tense when watching this the first time.
Yeah.
Also, I haven't mentioned it yet. First time I watched this, I had taken an edible just beforehand. So like when this scene came around, I was like,
were you tripping out?
Oh damn, this movie got real.
Were you falling off a cliff at this point?
I was just watching euphemism shots of a space shuttle, and now I'm like, this is real. I was into it. I'm like, God damn it, Costner. You hit the brakes. I don't know. Also, why weren't the brakes an option in this movie?
I agree. Like when I had a bike, it was you pedal backwards for a second, and that's your brakes on your two-wheeler, right?
Yeah,
like, why doesn't he have that thing?
He must. But anyways, Sarah and Becky like catch up to him and like are able to grab onto him. It is good though. Like it teases you with like, I was like, he might die right now.
Yeah, and it's justified. You're like, yeah, these races take place on these, frankly, kind of death-defying tracks. So
yeah,
to lose your pace so much on a cliff like that, I'm like, I buy that. I buy that this could happen.
Yeah. But I don't know if that's how an aneurysm works, because they don't take him to a hospital after. They don't. And I don't know. I don't know a lot about aneurysms. And like, seriously, like, I know a lot of people out there have had people who have suffered from these. So I don't mean to make light of any of this.
Yeah. So they're a horrendous. They are an absolutely tragic and horrendous condition that can happen. I had one of my childhood mentors. Her daughter passed away of an aneurysm, and they can. So I do know that they can happen just basically in essentially in no time at all. I don't know that they can't happen over a longer period, as is sort of displayed in this movie.
Yeah.
But I will say part of what is built into this is that Costner kind of reveals after this happened, Marcus reveals, the doctors think I could have days at most. And I'm fairly certain that that's not how aneurysms work.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, at least what's set up in the movie is that if it's what their dad had, they do say it took weeks. So I don't know if it's still wrong.
Yeah,
but
I could be wrong. I have a feeling that's maybe just some liberties that they're taking with the script to make it convenient, knowing this movie. But maybe that is how it works.
I can already feel the tweets just going, Adam Cam, do some fucking research before you do your podcast. Yeah. Moving on.
David wins.
David, no, he doesn't win the race. He wins the race to every marker.
Yeah. He wins these time bonuses. All of them.
Yeah. But by the time it's getting to the finish line, the pack is catching up to him, and he barely has enough gas because he expended so much early. Yeah. He finishes in third. So at the end of this race, he's only 11 seconds behind Muzzin on the day. And then, so David wins the race. Becky finds him. He's like, Marcus needs you. He's in trouble. There's a really bad scene of her At first, I thought it was them pulling up to the hospital.
Which would make all the sense in the world.
Where Marcus must be. And then he goes into a hotel. I'm like, why are you at the hotel?
Did he go at all? Because it seems like he didn't, and then that's insane.
He didn't. He doesn't. But he is a doctor, so he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, he's a doctor who's suffering this condition.
Yeah,
so it's fine. Just put him in a hotel room with the hotel towel, with a hotel hand cloth,
a damp rag
on his head.
Just a damp cloth. That's what I need when I'm feeling ill. But there is a really just again editing, just bad lingering of Becky dropping David off and then slamming into and having a breakdown on the steering wheel like it's a big moment. You've known these guys for a week. In real life, you're like, hey guys, I was just hitching a ride and I got way too attached to some weird family drama that's really happening, and I think I should maybe take a step back here. That's what a real person
says
does.
Everything that Jennifer Grey as Sally was right to be like,
she's like,
I'm out of here, I'm leaving.
Yeah, bring back Jennifer Grey. The fact that David picks Becky over Leslie tells you everything you need to know about him. You know? Leslie, a sweetheart, a darling. Becky, no.
Lovely girl. Becky, who betrayed her principles just because she wanted some McDonald's. Yeah. And has no discernible reason why that they have no chemistry between them. They have no motivation as to why they're.
But the idea is that Becky is a girl that he didn't meet through his family. She likes him for him.
That's a low bar.
I know
because that's literally as Costner says, that's most people that you could.
Yeah,
meet.
I know, but that is what is set up at the beginning of. That is what is very poorly set up, is that he doesn't he wants somebody who likes him for him. Marcus and David have this big scene where this is the big blowout scene. Not blowout, the kind of face the truth scene. And it's not very good. There's when I said there's some lines that should be edited out that make you think maybe David's the one suffering a brain condition, I think I'm really starting to like Brussels sprouts. There's a line in this that he literally says,
"How can you be sick anyway? Just look at yourself. What you got? You have a mustache and everything is."
How can you be sick? Look at you. You've got a mustache. That is a line in the scene.
I thought that I didn't have edibles, and I thought that leapt out of my head because I was thinking and laughing so much about the mustache that I thought, did I just say that, or did the character in the movie just say
that? Was that was the line I went, what? That made my brain zoom in. What the heck? And then they just move past it. Nobody's what do you, sorry, can we interrogate why you think a mustache means health? He doesn't have cancer.
He doesn't have cancer. He's not undergoing chemotherapy. So why would you worry? Because he also had a head of hair. So what is it about upper lip hair that you think is somehow like indicative of whether or not you have a clean bill of health.
And I'll tell you, on the IMDb quote page, that's the number one quote on there. Is like that's the first entry. It's like you got a mustache.
I couldn't agree more. Even though I disagree vehemently with the Rotten Tomatoes score.
Well, that's your right. How am I still fighting for this movie? I've done nothing but shit on it, but I like it.
I don't know. But
I like it.
You got what you wanted this episode. We're finally disagreeing.
Again, Costner's hits home that theme one more time. It's like, you're not giving up. You're going to race tomorrow.
I'll stay here with you. But I can't race tomorrow.
That's great, David. That's just great. And then years from now, you tell your kids that there was this race in Colorado and I could have done just great. If my brother hadn't gotten sick, you're not going to use me as an excuse.
I am not listening to you anymore.
Damn it, David! I'm still alive. So don't ignore me.
Which is an insane moral.
It is an insane moral because there are things that are more important than bike racing. Your brother's health is one of them.
That you don't care about. That you did this because you clearly at the beginning want to just be with your brother, but now your brother's dying.
But what does his brother really want? His brother wants him to succeed, and that's what he's doing. Come on, Adam. This is the movies. We aspire to some Ayn Randian ideal, a Randian ideal of what a man should be.
I'm sure Paul Ryan loves this movie.
Yeah, I'm sure. American Flyers.
I just want to say briefly. I won't go too deep into it. You have egregiously overlooked some great Randolph scenes in the last act.
Oh yeah, I didn't write any of the Randolph scenes down. No,
because they were too good, and because you're a plebe who doesn't understand what good art is, and so you just skipped over it. But that's fine. We'll just keep going. Even though Randolph is the greatest character in Costner history so far.
Okay, so we haven't explained Randolph. Randolph is John Amos's unmotivated son, who John Amos wants him to work out, and Randolph's like, I want to be a bowler, and John Amos is like, well, why don't you pick up a real sport? And he's like, wow, there's no black bowlers. Maybe I should be a bowler. And John Amos wants to try and get his son Randolph to work out. And that's the end of it. There's nothing else important.
No,
you got it all. You're caught up.
You're wrong.
Yeah, yes.
You're wrong. Randolph provides some levity to the whole situation. And he helps get Janice Rule there, Ja Rule there later.
He doesn't help. No,
he's there.
He's there.
He's there.
Edit him out of the movie, and he's not there.
Well, you know what? We've complained about the editing, and this is one thing I think that they did the right thing by keeping this character.
My goodness. Anyways, Muzzin's got one. This is the weirdest scene. This is like the face turn scene for Muzzin that when I was high on edibles, I was like, this guy's a monster. And Hallie's like, no, that was his good scene. I'm like, no, because okay.
I don't think you're
wrong. I noticed it on a second rewatching. He calls her a racial slur twice in this movie. So earlier, David is blown away because she's Sarah is Apache.
Yes.
And twice, Muzzin calls her Geronimo.
Yes. I didn't really clock what he was saying. So he just hurls a slur at her twice.
Yes.
In this movie. And this is during his I'm not that bad of a guy scene, which says everything. Again, we've talked about 80s writers before thinking just having just all the wrong ideas about what makes a character redeemable and not, and how can we throw racism in to play with.
Yeah. And that's charming and endearing.
Yeah.
Maybe a good reason why Sarah left him for Marcus, that his pet name for her was racial slur.
Yeah, that he's just an insane racist.
And it's when he says it the first time, you're like, okay, this is a heel, this is a bad guy. But this is when he's like, oh, you're being endearing and nice. Yeah. It's him asking, how's Marcus? I hope Marcus is okay. Yeah. And that kind of brings us to the third race.
Yeah, we're closing towards the end here. 8 hours in.
Thanks for sticking around.
So we're on the third race. It's supposed to be a high altitude race, which makes specifically folks who haven't trained in that atmosphere fall back from when they would normally be. So it gives us a little bit of justification for what's to come. So they're high in the mountains. Marcus sees Conrad on the highway. And even though you didn't put on the notes here, of course, Randolph is there too.
Oh my goodness.
Randolph has been the hero who's brought Mrs. Summers to the, I guess not to the race. Like, again, editing is so unclear here. Like, how did they just happen across them? And wasn't the van that they're in supposed to be tailing David? Why are they just like in traffic right now when the race started? It makes no sense.
Why would you know to pull over to the opposite side of the highway to start to flag someone down?
Yeah, like no one does that. No. I know there's no cell phones at this point, but no one does that. Like the dude who's basically on his deathbed happens to look out and go, I think that's my mom, and then stop the car. So it makes zero sense.
Mrs. Summers runs across the highway.
Which at least you're like, okay, because she's so, I have to see my son because she's now found out that he's dying.
Her son's gonna die,
but also like could have done it a million other ways. Like you didn't need to do that. You didn't need to almost die. But they reunite. We cut back to the race. David is doing well. We're seeing a lot of racers fall back. Muzzin, the cannibal, and David are kind of right next to each other, and basically they look back and the Soviet racer is in third, and he basically says like, listen, you've got second place locked up. We've got him ahead. Like he won't be able to pull ahead of us. So let's just agree to coast in this position. You'll get second place. It'll be great. And we'll make sure that you place and he gets third. It seems like David is either almost agreeing to or decides to.
I think he has the moment to like, yeah, okay, that sounds good. And then it's like, oh no, wait, my brother warned me about this. This is the moment that I decide I'm going to win this race.
Yeah.
It's exactly the theme of the movie, Adam.
Is it? I think.
It is.
I think the theme of the movie is
American Flyers.
No, it's Randolph's journey. So he has the moment where he decides I'm not going to give up. And then Muzzin, who just had his maybe I'm have a person, even though I'm a raging racist. Maybe I am have a person scene. Then gets so mad that this guy is deciding, no, I still want to be in this race and compete against you. So he decides he's going to murder David by trying to force him off a cliff. The guy that he
almost murders him.
He almost does. The guy whose his brother was his best friend and partner, and then he was just legitimately worried about him.
Right.
He has this like almost redeeming moment at the not hospital, and then like, I'm gonna murder his brother.
I'm gonna push him down a cliff. I'm gonna make that mother have two dead sons.
Yeah, exactly. So he tries to force him off a cliff, but David punches Muzzin. And gets ahead, and he races ahead, and he comes first. But of course, there's still a little. This was a decent spot where it's a cool way to end it. Like he finishes in first place of this race, but of course, what matters is the overall time. And the whole thing is if Muzzin has to get within 11 seconds. If he does, he wins because he had an 11-second lead. And then just a horrible moment in terms of like scene work, visual editing, and again sound editing. Everyone apparently everyone is so on the ball.
Yeah, everyone knows that it's 11 seconds.
That everybody's counting as soon as David goes across. 11, 10, 9, 8, and they like in the perfect unison of which a crowd can never achieve. He doesn't make the 11 seconds. David wins the race, and I will say also, like in a moment that should have some more fanfare or champagne or like a bigger moment. I'm thinking of the episode we recorded of like Days of Thunder, which I think learned a lot of lessons from this movie.
Yeah,
that's how a movie is this movie is supposed to end. It kind of falls a little flat, but. Anyway, the family is reunited because Marcus was there. Janice is there now. They came to the race. They hug. They pose for a picture. That picture
Makes it on the mantle.
Makes it on the mantle, gets snapped into black and white, and we roll to credits. David has won the race, has proven that I don't know what he proved, but
he proved he could compete and do something. There was character growth.
Even though that wasn't Marcus's problem at the beginning, it was purely to do with his career.
What they should have had, though, what was a problem? They should have had a moment before the 11 seconds was up where Muzzin quit to show.
That's a good call.
A moment
where he knew he was going to make it.
Where he knew he wasn't going to make it and he quit.
Yeah.
That's what they should have had. And then they also should have edited it out because they have Muzzin coming up to David after he went to goes doing that handshake and be like, next year I'll get you, oh, good on you, man. You won. It's like,
tried to murder me like moments ago, like not even real time 5 minutes ago in this movie. Like you tried to push me off a goddamn cliff. What are you doing trying to shake my hand? First of all, call the police and arrest this man.
Yeah. Murder isn't okay even in sports. Like, you're not allowed to kill people.
I'm going to tell you something. Even in this world, that's true.
Yeah.
Even in the American Flyers world, you can't just try to kill someone.
So, Adam, what do you think of this movie?
I think it was great, and I think that it's underrated. And I think that it changed the way I look at cinema for all time. This is a bad film. This is a bad movie. And I'm not saying it's irredeemable, and I'm not even the people that the roles that I've harped on. Listen, a movie has so many moving parts. I don't take pleasure in dragging this, but listen, this is all subjective. You can like what you like. There's probably no this is good and this is bad in art. But having said that, this is bad.
All right. Yeah. I'll say that my first edible watch of this movie, I had a very similar take. I was very aware of the editing and the lack thereof, and the weird line delivery. And you just love, like, why are you showing me this? And maybe that's why Randolph just didn't hit me. I was like, why am I seeing this kid right now? I don't need him.
I mean, I'll say, like, I don't think he's integral to the plot. I'm saying there's so many things that bug me with the plot that he was my reprieve,
right,
which is why I love him.
But when I watched it again for a second time, and then I watched it today for kind of a third, not really, just let it wash over me time. I
like how your math worked there. Watch it once, watch it twice, and then when I watched it another time, it was like kind of my third time.
Well, I didn't like it. Was like I was doing other stuff while I watched it. The second time I watched it, I was like, I let go. I was like, yeah, there's some dumb stuff. There's some like things I can see what the writer is trying to write. There's some stuff jammed in that it's not the most elegant way of writing it by any means.
Which again, still could be the editing. Like we really dragged the script.
I think the script. I want to drag the script. I want to keep it. It's the script deserves to be dragged at least a little bit.
At least I think we probably, you're right. We probably do that because the dialogue is so black.
And then, but on the second watch, I went. The movie does move pretty well from like.
I think pacing is fine.
7 minutes into the movie, Davey and Marcus are going to Wisconsin. 15 minutes into the movie, we've got the torture test. You know, like it does move well. And I actually thought the racing, how they made racing interesting was well done. For 3 races, I was interested, I was engaged. As a sports movie, I was like, I'm into watching this. And I had a fun time. I liked the soundtrack. I liked the score. It was like pure 80s, like whatever garbage rock, but I loved it. It was good.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I think this, particularly the soundtrack, is like, it is perfect for what this movie is. I think that they set out to make the great American cycling movie, and it just and because they had those lofty expectations that they then formed, like, this script has to be a drama between family. It has to have these great moments. It's like, it has to have like the triumph of succeeding against all odds. And it just like, it clearly is positioned to be that. And it just so falls flat that maybe, again, that's why it feels like like, listen, this isn't going to bottom below Malibu Hot Summer.
No.
But I think that's why it feels just so rough.
I think because we were both very pleasantly surprised by a couple movies that neither of us had seen, where we were like, Costner's hitting the ground running, and this is
the first stumble.
This is the first. I don't want to call it a stumble for him. Like, he's not as good as because he isn't like the best part in a really, really, really bad movie. He's just like a fine part in a not that great movie. It's like harder to.
But I will say that we've, like, you watch even like something like Shadows Run Black, where you watch Costner and you see, like, we watched a lot of movies in that first episode where he's a class above the movie he's in. And I will say that's not the case in this. And again, some of that could be editing too, but I think that, like, and again, I'm not saying he just like all of a sudden becomes a bad actor for this movie. I'm just saying stumble here where we've seen a lot of like huge strides and win, and we're like, ooh, this one, like, this is every bad movie we've watched so far, Costner has been the MVP for good reason, for legitimate reason, not just because we're homers, and he's not the MVP of this one, at least.
Okay, so MVP for real, is it Randolph?
Yeah, I really love. I really love Randolph as a character. I'll say to flesh out a little bit. I'll say I love Randolph and John Amos, both as their relationship as this little subplot. John Amos is just good in everything he does. He just plays that character well. And then even those scenes that aren't really earned of Sarah calling and saying, I think it's starting, and just his, like, he has very little to work with in this movie, but then the moments that he does have where it has some emotional impact, and he doesn't even really get a resolution or an arc or anything like that. So I'll flesh out a little bit and say Randolph and John Amos are my MVPs.
I might stick with Robert Townsend as Jerome. I also love Jennifer Grey. I loved seeing her early on. Yeah. Like in a movie that before she's
awesome in that scene.
She's awesome. And you're clearly like, oh yeah, you will become something big.
Yeah, absolutely. Like she is in some ways, like she's that Costner role where you're like, oh, like she only has this little part to do, but she nails it. She absolutely nails it.
Yes. And I wanted to go like, is it the director? Is it the cinematographer? And I couldn't. So that's who I'm going with. I think I'm going to go with Jennifer Grey.
All right.
Finally, I don't think we need to do best review, worst review. There wasn't a lot of good reviews. Even the best review I could find was Roger Ebert, who basically panned it. So even though it has a 65 Rotten Tomatoes score, but the critics score on Rotten Tomatoes is like a lot of people watching in retrospect. It's not like what people watched like at the time.
Yeah, especially with the old ones too. Yeah, exactly. So you don't often get like a true review when it came.
Yeah, I want to know. Yeah, exactly. I want to know what people thought the opening weekend. Roger Ebert did not love it. Vincent Canby of the New York Times loved it even less. I'll just read one line. This is the worst review. He said, "The performances aren't bad, but they aren't good enough to give the film the heft it doesn't otherwise have. Without material to work with, Mr. Grant, Mr. Costner, and Alexandra Paul have the sincerely empty manner of people selling beer or burgers in television commercials."
Yep.
And
I don't disagree.
Yeah, they're not bad, but they aren't good. And I'd say maybe David Grant is bad, but there are moments where I'm like, there's a bit of a charming doofus.
I mean, like you said, obviously, like, I mean, hey, the guy won Tony Award. The guy has had a career since then.
Yeah. Where does this fit on your power rankings?
Well,
as we said last episode, we're kind of doing an aggregate of how good is the movie and then how good is Kevin in the movie. So to leave you off, we've got Fandango number 1. We've got Silverado number 2. We've got Testament number 3. Are you going to go below Francis? Like Francis is the next one where he's not even in it. But the movie was so good we ranked it higher.
Yeah. It's
I'm putting it below Testament.
It's definitely below. There's no question there. Yeah, it's not gonna crack above Testament. I'm deeply considering putting it below Francis. Oh boy, I'm gonna lobby for it to be below Francis. Francis is still a good movie, and this is not a good movie.
If Francis is an 8 and we give Kevin Costner like 1 score for his role in Francis, we're talking the aggregate, they're a 9. You're saying like that the 2 scores don't add up to 9. 4.5 plus 4.5.
I would say that because it's not a good movie, and like I said, like I'm sorry, this is my least favorite Costner performance too. And I know some of that's a script and blah blah, but I'm also just saying, like, listen, it's not a great performance, and it's not a great movie. Neither of those things.
This is bold.
Neither of those things are passable for me. Sorry.
I hope people get at us about this because
good. That'll create the engagement that we want.
All right.
Yeah. What did Eric Bischoff say? Controversy creates cash. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess so. We're putting it below Francis. I want everybody to know that I liked it. I liked it. It's a fun movie. Go watch it.
You liked it and didn't like Randolph. You're an idiot.
All right. Next episode, guys, we got The Untouchables. We're getting into the good stuff.
Yeah. Maybe now that we've done a 5-hour episode, it'll feel like a reprieve to do an hour and a half for The Untouchables because we'll have a lot of great things to say, I'm sure.
We won't bicker as much about The Untouchables.
And I'm excited because I just want to say up front, I have not seen The Untouchables. So I'm going in.
Get the fuck out of here.
I'm going in fresh.
Oh my God.
As a daisy for this.
How have you not seen that movie?
I know. I love him.
How do you have the gall
to start a Costner podcast and not have seen this movie? I don't know, but I did.
Hey, I want everyone out there to know that I did not know this about my co-host.
I said multiple times there's tons of big Costner movies that I've actually never seen. And that I think that speaks depths about my love for him. That you know, I look at a movie like Night Shift, and I'm like, this guy is the actor.
I want everybody to know I do not know this man. He found me on Craigslist, and we just started chatting.
Yeah, exactly. That says more about you than me that you agreed to that.
I'm turning Adam off. All right, peace.
On draft day, talking swing vote. Wyatt Earp and JFK.